So I'm on mainland Orkney. I'm waiting for a ferry to take me across to Rousay. It's a special island. It's known as the Egypt of the North, and we're going to visit an excavation that's won an award for the rescue excavation of 2024 by current Archaeology. Makes a change from catching a bus to work. Yeah. Hold on to your hats. Yep, we've arrived on Rousay.
Rousay is packed with wonderful archaeological sites. They date right back to the Neolithic through the Iron Age, Pictish and Viking periods. One of the most famous is Midehowe Broch, an Iron Age circular fortified building with two concentric stone walls and a staircase in between. Brochs, which date from between 400 BC and 100 AD, are only found in Scotland, and Midehowe is one of the best preserved examples. Unfortunately, it's been damaged by coastal erosion, which is threatening sites across Orkney. Not far away is another fantastic archaeological site, the Midehowe Chambered Cairn. This is the largest of 15 Neolithic communal burial monuments on the island of Rousay, and one of the best preserved in Western Europe. A short walk along the coast takes you past Viking and medieval monuments to the site I want to show you.
So we're getting closer.
The Knowe of Swandro. My friends Steve and Julie from Bradford University have been digging here for 10 years. They've discovered a complex series of structures from Iron Age roundhouses, Pictish buildings, a Viking settlement and a Norse long hall, all of which are losing their battle with the elements. And when I get to site, who should I bump into but a fellow Time Team member?
Jackie McKinley!
Oh my goodness me, there's no escape.
What are you doing here?
Well, I could ask you the same question.
I'm working.
Yeah, so am I. This is called a trowel. This is called a site. I'm doing some digging.
So this is how you spend your holidays?
This is my holidays, yes. Yeah, Busman's holiday it's called. I get to come out and play. It's great stuff.
And you've been here for about 10 years?
Not continuously, but I have been coming up here for 10 years. But as you know, John, we have a long history of working in the Northern Isles. And if you don't like the archaeology here, you don't like archaeology.
The 2024 season was going to be the last, finishing the recording and the excavation of the massive Iron Age roundhouse that had been discovered.
So we're interrupting the filming because the sheep are invading. Is this a common occurrence?
It has been this year.
It's been a year since I've been on site. It's changed quite a bit.
Has it? You've noticed? That's
Yeah.
good. That's a very good thing, and in a good way, I hope. Not the erosion side of things, but the excavation side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're happy to give me a quick tour?
I will indeed. If you'd like to come into our roundhouse, I can take you down and show you around that way.
And by the end of this, I'm going to come away thinking, have we got a Broch or have we got something else?
Something else. Definitely something else. Okay.
So this is the entrance into the site?
That's right. Well, it's the entrance into this building on the site, because of course we know from the geophysics that there are buildings all the way round and would have been on this side as well, where the sea's taken them away. And we've actually investigated just along the coastline here and got 3 or 4 other buildings going that way, but not much of them left.
Yeah.
So this would have been the big central house, the big roundhouse. And
These walls are massive though, aren't they?
they are absolutely massive.
What,
so
2 metres wide?
easily. And you're looking at several hundred years of building and rebuilding here. We're not entirely sure how much yet, but certainly this outer wall that you see here, just beyond the sandbags, because of course we're about to pack the site away for the winter, actually goes right out down there to where you see the seaweed and back round again. It is massive.
And you've lost all that?
Yeah, we just got the bottom foundations there, pretty much, and they erode more and more every year.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing about coastal erosion sites like this is, once they've gone, there's not another identical site 100 metres further up the hill.
No.
They are on the coast or near the coast for a
Yeah.
reason. And we're losing that information every day, tide by tide. So, as you can see, these are really, really massive.
These are monumental, aren't they?
They are huge. They are massive blocks, and just the thought of putting those into a building like this.
So this is the full width of the outer skin.
Yeah, and we think this is an early Iron Age building. We have dates from down there under the wall, which are about 400 to 600 BC, which puts it firmly pre-Broch and into the early Iron Age. And then the building seems to have been remodelled and rebuilt over the years, and actually they did turn it into something that looked more like a Broch in the end.
I've been playing this game with Steve and Julie. I've been saying this site is a Broch, but there's certain elements of a Broch that they're convincing me aren't visible here. And one of the main things is you've got the outer skin, you've got the reinforcement, you don't have a passageway between, and that's characteristic of a Broch.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm losing the argument at the moment. This is a blocking, surely. An entrance?
Yes, but it's not an entrance, not in the way that you're thinking. What it's blocking is what would have been part of a pier, an aisled pier, like you get in wheelhouses,
Okay.
like you get in the Western Isles, and like we had at Old Scatness, where you have piers that go around the walls with a gap between where you can walk and then an upper story. And then later on they fill in those gaps. And that's what that is.
But you don't get wheelhouses
No.
in Orkney.
No, but this is an Orcadian form of wheelhouse. It doesn't look quite like the ones in the Western Isles or quite like what we had in Shetland. And what they're doing is they're using big orthostats and big standing stones, the way they know how to build in Orkney with the kind of stone they've got, to build something which is very, very similar. And what we're thinking now is we need to go back to some of the really old excavations and look and see what's there.
If this is a wheelhouse and not a Broch, it would be a really important discovery that could change the interpretations of many of the other Brochs found across Orkney.
So I can't convince you that it's a Broch.
It's early Iron Age, and then later buildings put in,
Yeah.
but we've got nothing to say it's a Broch yet.
Steve and Julie's site on Shetland, Scatness, it was just unbelievable. A Broch, wheelhouse, a whole range of buildings right at the edge of the airport.
Yeah, I mean it's a complete village centred on the Broch, and what we have here is exactly the same.
Yeah.
We're dealing with a village centred on this monumental roundhouse. I mean it's big, it's in proportions the same size as a Broch,
Yeah.
but we haven't got all the features of a Broch.
And so the features of the Broch that are missing, I mean, you've got a ditch.
You've got a ditch is defended, and that's interesting itself because that ditch goes out of use by the 1st century BC, where you would normally think with Brochs and the assumptions that have been made of Brochs that they're in the main time of occupation is 1st century BC, 1st century AD.
Yeah.
And what we have is the need for defence clearly going out.
Obviously, just along the coast, we've got Midehowe Broch.
Midehowe, there's the Chamber 2, and which is one of the best stored cairns in Orkney, and then the Broch itself, which is a little village. And what we have here is another little village, and there's a whole series of Brochs going down the coastline, and it's matched on the other side.
Because you've got the Broch of Gurness, which is the most famous.
Yes, but a series of other Broch mounds going through. And what's important, I think, is for trade coming into Orkney. And this is important I think in the Neolithic times because we've got all these chamber tombs along there, but also in the Iron Age because of the number of blocks we've got on both sides. And, this goes into the heart of the island complex that makes up Orkney.
I was lucky enough to make the trip to Shetland to see for myself the differences between the Broch and the wheelhouse at Old Scatness, which Julie and Steve think has similarities to the Swandro site.
So we're just outside the Broch, but what's the difference between the Broch and where we're standing, this building?
The Broch is something that would have been much more massive in terms of the width of the wall. So if you look on here, we've got the Broch in the middle, which is the earliest feature on the site, and then these big roundhouses here. Now there was a Broch ditch that went with the Broch and went all the way around the edge here.
But coming back to this structure, I mean, what's the main elements?
Well, this has a diameter that's very similar to that of the Broch, so it's enormous. But the walls are actually single, so that they're just a metre or so wide. They're not as massive, and yet they have gone at least 1.5 stories high. So there is the ground floor to it, and then all these piers around the edge. They would have helped to support a mezzanine floor, which was above this first floor level. Then above that, obviously, you've got the roof, which you can only begin to imagine how they must have roofed a building like this.
Join a thriving worldwide community of Time Team fans on Patreon.
Our new target is to reach 15,000 worldwide supporters on Patreon by the end of 2025. This will enable us to continue expanding the Time Team world with more digs and greater access than ever before.
Back in Orkney at Swandro, an approaching downpour illustrates why these structures needed to be so solid.
Look, you can see it. Can you see it coming?
I can start to feel it.
Yep, it's going to be with them soon. In fact, I'm going to have to go and get my coat before I get completely silly.
In the shelter of the find shed, Julie and Jackie take a look at some of the artefacts from this year's excavations.
I'm afraid.
Not a room for manoeuvre.
So,
But you've been cleaning that whalebone.
We have.
Weaving, oh wow.
you can't get much closer, can you, to the person who made it? Because look, you can see the knife marks there,
Oh right, yeah.
where they've decided where the teeth are going
They've
to
marked
be.
out the
They've
base
marked
of it,
out.
haven't they? Yeah.
And there's 2 little marks here on the fishtail bit as well. There's 2 marks there, which must be something to do with, this is the shape
Yeah.
I want for
Yeah.
the handle.
I love this because I've seen quite a number of weaving combs,
Yeah,
not from this particular period, but the fact that you've got this fishtail on it is
never
just
seen one quite like
lovely,
that.
isn't it?
Yeah.
The interesting thing about this though is this was found in that really small area. I mean, it was only
Yeah.
about 30 by 30
Yep, yep,
centimetres, and that's the same area that I found those
Your
at the
little
bottom of the
pins.
stairs
Yeah,
that I
yeah,
found
yeah.
6 bone pins.
Yeah.
Now these were all in a clump together, and the other 2 were a little bit further apart. But these again look like unfinished
They are
products.
I think so. Yeah.
So it looks like somebody's been working on stuff in that room. Things that haven't they've been chucking in one corner, basically.
Also, if you remember, you were working in that room last year, and on the fireplace, the top of the fireplace, there were another 3 antler tines that looked as if somebody had been working. It must be a workshop.
Look, we've got the bone and the antler,
Yeah.
which is the natural materials
Yeah,
that people
absolutely.
are using. But the other natural material, and I always love this, you only need to walk on the beach and you can pick something like this up.
Yes. Yeah.
But then when you use it, it becomes a tool. So you've got this end is amazing. Look how smooth that is.
That's quite unusual because most of the ones we get are just pounders.
Yes, this is unbelievable.
It's beautiful.
Absolutely, I have never seen anything like that. Now, a lot of the time you get stone pot lids, which is when I first saw that, I thought it was a stone pot lid, but I thought it was a very neat one because normally the edges are quite broken up, but that isn't what that is.
That's not what it is. And actually, if you look at the edges, you can tell they're fine and they're very beautifully ground.
Yeah.
I get sick of saying this. We don't actually know what these are. They are found in various places. Iron Age into the late Iron Age, so early centuries AD.
The finds give clues about what was going on in the various rooms inside the structure.
So this is an original doorway in?
Yes, we think so, into this room. Doorstep, step over the doorstep, shut the door behind you.
No. So that's, in effect, the hinge?
Yes, for the door.
Wow.
This is the advantage of stone archaeology. These things stay and you can see them. These would have been higher. These were as high as all of these upright stones you see, but these broke. These are all breaking.
So, just so people understand, the little holes, that's where you've taken...
Yes, archaeomagnetic samples from those to get dates.
Yeah.
So we're doing obviously radiocarbon as well from the bone and from the carbonised plant remains. Yeah. But archaeomagnetic dates, we've got a lot of hearths.
Yeah.
And that gives us an extra bite at the cherry, another way of trying to date these rooms and put them into some kind of sequence.
So, what are we seeing there? I mean, could that be a box bed?
Well, it's not a bad explanation. We don't know what the function of the part inside was.
Yeah.
But what we think is that, like at Midehowe, just along the coast, and some of the other Orkney brochs, this cell would have had a roof on it. It would have been corbelled, so you put the stones, instead of arches, you just put every layer of stone slightly further in and then a capstone on top.
Yeah.
And that gives you an upper floor, in effect. It's too dangerous for us to excavate in there. That's the last thing we'll take down, because these stones are very, very broken. But actually, one of the things that was really intriguing about this room and the next room that you might just still be able to see on the wall is the yellow clay. Can you see the yellow clay in the walls? And there was a big stone here also covered in yellow clay. They use this a lot, and you can actually see it in the next room as well. So the walls of this building wouldn't be stone coloured, they are probably covered in clay.
Clay-lined.
Clay-lined.
A sort of early plaster.
You know, you've got a dry stone building in Orkney. It's not a bad idea to have a kind of clay lining, and also it would have made the building lighter than we expect them to be. There's even sooting on that wall. You can maybe just see some dark patches on the wall, because you've got all these hearths in here. You know, there would have been soot and smoke from the fires.
Julie, I remember last year when I was here, you just started to reveal this hearth.
That's right, yes.
And on either side, you'd got whale bones set into the ground.
That's right, yeah. We could lift the one on this side, but the one on that side, you can see it's had ash over the top of it. It's very charred, and it's quite difficult to do anything with. It's disintegrating.
So this looks very complex. But I'm seeing a complex of halves.
Yes, yes. These are hearths we think that go with the furnace, and there were actually a whole set along there as well that we've removed. And we still have to get a date on this to understand exactly what it is. It's later than the room that we were in with the doorway, but we don't know exactly how much later. Possibly 4th, 5th century AD.
Really?
Some of it.
So you're almost getting Pictish?
We're almost getting Pictish, yes. And in fact, we have had Pictish finds from higher up in this building. We thought that we were dealing with a Neolithic tomb with maybe a small Iron Age house on top.
Right, I
because
understand.
That happens.
Yes.
You know, that's happened quite a few times in Orkney, certainly.
Yeah. But you're holding back because you've just said
we are
something
now,
earlier now.
We are now wondering if we really do have, we definitely have something that is earlier than those walls that I said were 400 to 600 BC.
Okay.
And whatever it is, involves huge, massive walls and masonry running right under all of this.
Where? No.
Well,
Can you show me?
Come and look at what Carla's got here. So the problem when you get down to this end of the site is that everything is water worn. So it doesn't look very neat and crisp as stonework because it's been hit by the sea and the sand so often. But you can maybe just see here, this is a wall line here.
Yes, that's quite clear. And then
Yeah. And this is also a wall line here. This is the outer face of that wall.
so a wall of that width,
That size.
but that's going underneath
That's going underneath
everything.
all of this.
I mean, clearly it's very early days, but you're not getting any fines, are you?
There is absolutely nothing coming from this, not from these, between these walls, other than later material on the top of them. There's no domestic material. There's no bone. There's no charcoal.
So playing devil's advocate, if there's no cultural material, you're back to tomb.
Yeah, I'm not going to stake my life on it, but there is something under this site which is much older and is very different, and that's what we're going to have to find out next year.
Next year, I'm going to be booking my return ticket.
The team will now return to Swandro in 2025, when they will try to answer more questions about the wheelhouse structure and also establish whether there really is a Neolithic burial chamber below the Iron Age remains. Their work has really highlighted how critical it is to record and understand these important archaeological sites, which are under increasing threat due to climate change. It will not be long before Swandro disappears completely under the sea.
Join Time Team on Patreon to access exclusive 3D models, masterclasses, and behind-the-scenes insights.